Hi guys, we are here with Pearly Montagu, and she is a TEDx speaker and a renowned healer with an extraordinary gift. Following a profound near-death experience, Pearly discovered a rare form of synesthesia, an ability to see physical and emotional trauma within the body in vivid colors and structures, disrupting how physiology and biology occur. The combination of this unique gift of sight combined with her subsequent training in energy healing modalities, including craniosacral therapy and reflexology. Pearly has developed an innovative somatic and energetic approach that supports the release of trauma held in the body, encouraging regulation of the nervous system and healthy biological function, which has made her a sought after and beloved healer. She supports clients around the world and online. Wow, Pearly, I just want to know, okay, you have the ability to see physical and emotional trauma within the body. When you look at me,
Yeah.
what do you see? Honestly, I'm putting you on the spot.
That's interesting. I mean, I typically when I work with someone, it's in a 2 hours held space, and I am lucky enough to be able to turn a gift on and off when I start to tune in and just make myself available. But very, very briefly, there's something behind your shoulder on your left side, just behind your heart. The left side is typically when you see something behind the heart. Maybe it's something that's been emotionally painful, feels connected to your mother. Don't know. We can talk about this more offline, but
Wow.
I don't know if that
Wow.
resonates with
Very
you.
interesting. And what about the color? Like, what colors do you see on me?
With what I see now, it's like a dark gray. Typically, the way that I've learned it, if someone has an acute pain, I often will see it in red. And then most of the rest of the colors, not always, it can be like shades of gray, like I want to say 50 shades of gray. But yeah, and they'll have yeah, sometimes if something feels very toxic, almost like pus, like you would get from a wound that's gone wrong. Sometimes you can see that sort of green energy if something looks a bit sort of putrid and like, yeah, just a little out of kilter. Yeah, I don't know if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, very interesting how these colors are associated, and we're gonna get into that. I'm fascinated by this. This is the first episode, this very first interview that I'm actually discussing this, and it's very fascinating. And what is gray? What does that even entail when you see gray on someone?
I mean, it's like a shadow. For example, if I'm working with someone and they are perhaps really young and really healthy and in a great place emotionally and physically, it's very hard for me to find things in the body because there's like a perfect coherence. And what I see is things that are not in terms of, I don't want to say how you're born because people can be born with generational trauma. And we can dive into that a little bit more. But if, if, if someone is in a great space, like I typically will see things that shouldn't be there if the body was like in its true form of like health. And I just say health in general. And so when anyone has some sort of emotional pain or physical pain, or we all go through some sort of trauma in our life, whether it's emotional or mental or perhaps chemical toxicity from living in cities. And what happens is biologically and energetically gets stored in the body. Rather like there's a brilliant book, which I love, which is called The Body Keeps the Score. But what I find is the biology of the body will always work to return to its original design. Like the body will always naturally try and come back into coherence. But our energetic body, like the energetic trauma, also needs its own pathways to heal and repair. And so what's happened is in a lot of our cultures today, we've lost those daily rituals that would have enabled that. Things like fireside song, dancing, ritual and ceremony and the like. And so what happens is you get generational trauma. And so, and I think perhaps that maybe might resonate, but it's a thing, and it's something I work with quite a lot. And then just anything that I can see, and it's not, it's, I mean, it is colors, but it's also structures. So it will look like that they'll take different shapes, whether it's like a hook or an arrow, or looks like something that looks a little bit like a shard of glass. Like, it's very varied. It's very varied. Of every session is different, because ultimately it just comes through me, and it's really not from me, and it just comes out of my mouth. But it's not knowledge that I have before I'm with someone, and I choose to open myself up and make myself available and see how I can support them. And I don't know if that resonates with you.
Yeah. Where do you think it's coming from? You said it comes through me and out of my
Mhm.
mouth. Where do you think it's coming from? God
Well,
or
yeah, I mean, I'm very specific about who I call in terms of beings from higher realms. And so for me, I remember it was such a moment, a sort of aha moment of my meditation teacher about 10 years ago said to me, there's an intelligence that sits behind our lives that's just waiting for us to show up. Look at nature, how it moves in perfect harmony from summer to autumn to winter to spring. And it was such a light. It felt like someone just turned on a light in a room that I had been dark in up until that point. And it landed so much at the heart base. And that was kind of, I guess, my beginning of my spiritual journey, and just realizing it's not just the 3D, and actually there's kind of a magical intelligence that you can tune into and tap into. And then if you look at neurolinguistic programming or manifesting, which is pretty mainstream now and people are pretty aware of, that there is something that lies beyond. And so if you're working in the energetic field, that there is something more than just us. I've learned to work with Archangel Michael, who's the angel of protection, and Archangel Gabriel, who's the angel of white light. And then also call in different lineages like Mary Magdalene and Isis, who are from the same lineage. And so it's really been such an era, or not an era, a journey of trial and error of learning how to, one, protect myself, which is something I didn't do early on. And it's really like burning out as a healer is a pretty well trodden path. So just learning, because there's absolutely no way I am able to do what I can do, or help people who can't hear to hear again, or someone who can't smell to smell again. And so it's really like I surrender, and the wisdom comes through me, and I wouldn't dream of owning that wisdom, but I'm just the connective tissue and just the vessel. And so, yeah, I don't know if that makes sense to you.
Yes, and you mentioned Mary Magdalene, and I absolutely love Mary Magdalene. And
Mm.
it is quite sad for me that, the early popes, and I think specifically, gosh, I don't want to say the wrong pope, but it was one of those, maybe Francesco or something, some pope at the beginning, that said she was a sinner because she was a prostitute and all this stuff. And then later
Mm-hmm.
on, he apologized,
Yeah.
miscalculated. She
Mm-hmm.
comes from Magdala. She couldn't have been a prostitute. She had money, okay? So she probably did have some relationships that, uh, with some men that were married. So yes, she
Mm-hmm.
was sinful, and they said in the Bible that she had what, seven uh, demons. That's what they used to call different things, different elements back then. And that's my translation. Okay. I'm
And
not a priest. I'm not, but the fact that, she has there's this misconception that she's this negative thing and she's this prostitute, and she's the apostle of the apostles. She's the first one that saw,
yeah, I mean,
the tomb.
I I totally hear you, and um Mary Magdalene came into my field last year in a big way, because someone that I was very close to, who was a huge figure in her life. And it was really interesting. So there's a fascinating book called The Magdalene Manuscripts, which is a channeled book, which I would highly recommend if you haven't already read it, although I think you already have. But it was just going through how it was about Mary Magdalene's life and how she was brought up by priestesses and how she was Yeshua's lover, and they practiced sex magic, and they went away for years before coming back to where he ultimately then transitioned and left his body and went on. But then it just talks about, it just talks about how she was ultimately a priestess. And I find it kind of beyond disappointing that and I have a lot of love and honor and respect for men, but how the patriarch have chosen to portray her and literally etch her out of history. And she's like, you can't even find, there's a whole, I can't remember exactly, but there's a whole thing which is about Mary Magdalene, which I think is in the Bible or part of the Bible that has like, she's pretty much written out of history, and as you say, betrayed as a whole. And it's like she was Yeshua's beloved, and everyone, or so many of the Christian people, bow to him, and he's their teacher and he's their guru and their God, if you like, and she was his beloved. So I find, and I feel my beloved is American, and so I feel a sort of a connection to the collective grief that he feels as an American with the current landscape of what's going on. And it's like, again, it's like there's this masculine patriarchal energy that's like driving the decisions that have been made that are globally influential and just affecting so many lives in a negative way. So it's kind of like, just taking a deep breath. Like, I'm 38, of thinking like, do I want to have children? Do I want to bring children into this world? Like, question number one, the side of like emotionally, do I want to have children? It's just like, and I don't know how you feel living in America. I'm European and I live in Spain, but I mean, what do you feel? Collective grief, or the sort of patriarchal sort of society where it's sort of driving so many countries of where we are in the world.
Yeah, that I'm with you on that. It's, you have 12 apostles, we have 12 months. Why didn't, like, we couldn't just have one female apostle? One, not 12, one. Oh, I guess it's because we don't have a 13th month. Is that why? Or why is it that the female couldn't get, when we have her named the apostle of the apostles, yet she's not named an apostle, and yet her book is taken out of the Bible. So it's very interesting. I'm not a feminist, but I do see, also like we've gotten like way too far into the other side when it came to excluding Mary Magdalene.
And I feel like, because from growing up in England, I spend a lot of time there, and I never felt any limitations as to what I could achieve, what I could build. I come from a very entrepreneurial family, and I've, had a more corporate finance background in my 20s before having the near-death experience that set me onto a different path. But it's like, you look at, even in Europe, where it's like women are, I wouldn't say equal, but there's a lot more equality. But then you look at all the leaders of all the European countries, and there's 3 women, and then there's 20 men. And so it's like, I mean, I guess I feel a huge amount of gratitude from speaking to a girlfriend who's Iranian, and just the pain of like what women have been through in Iran. And I didn't realize, she lives in America, she managed to escape, but I didn't realize the extent of people like her, and I don't know how many other women who their family said to them, we don't want to educate you, we don't want you to get smart, because then we can't control you. And that I had no idea that women weren't allowed to sing, which is just like, I live in Ibiza, where we do mantra singing and circles, and we do ecstatic dance, and there's such a freedom of expression in so many ways, from like sensuality to tantra to like whatever flavor of however you want to choose to show up in the world. And so, yeah, I guess I just feel like incredibly humbled to be born into a life and a body where I'm white, and I'm not a Saudi, and just all these things is kind of, it's a little bit painful and sad when you think about it.
Now I have a question that I kind of don't feel like asking, but because I don't want to drag negativity into the episode, but I'm like really curious. And maybe you share this, but is it like maybe a little tidbit about the story of your near-death experience? Is that something you feel like sharing? Feel comfortable?
Yeah, we can. I never really talk publicly about it in too much detail, but
Okay.
it's also a big part of my journey, so I'm happy to sort of touch on it. But I was I was in my 29th year, and then I was fundamentally involved in a really serious boat accident. And yeah, I had a white light near death experience, and I kind of came out of that after being in hospital and just in many ways mentally and physically brought to my knees. And the long health journey it's been of about 7 years. I'm
Oh my
38 now,
gosh.
of just layer by layer trying to understand and trying to educate myself on where my body was calling for support. And also, it took me years to actually understand my injuries. And then only 3 years later, I started to burn out and my thyroid went overactive. And there were so many transitions that happened. And I was eating meat and dairy just around that time of going into the accident. And then my boyfriend at the time said, I'm vegan and it's really important to me. So I said, okay, I'll support that. So it was kind of like there were just lots of endings. With every endings, there's a new beginning, or it's like deaths. You know, there's many ways to be a mother. There's many ways that you can go through grief, and there's many things that can be a death. And so for me, at the end of my 29th year, and actually, if you follow astrology, which I find, I mean, astrology is thousands of years old and it really resonates with me, but your 29th year is also known as your Saturn return. And
Oh.
so, and what that means is astrologically, Saturn is where you were when you were born. And so it's done a full cycle. But the typical experience of Saturn is like, can be changes that can be pretty significant and also quite painful. So, in a fun way, if you look at Saturn returns on YouTube, you'll see things like, I survived my Saturn return. It's
Dang.
kind of funny. And so I had this time of doing a neurolinguistic programming course, which really did change the course of my life. And then I had this boyfriend who changed my food in a very sort of black and white way. And before I had been like sick in a different way. You know, I had high cholesterol and I had my weight I couldn't manage and my skin wasn't great and I had tonsillitis a lot and I had sinusitis and like, yeah, it was just not, I wasn't on a
Man.
great path. But I think in your 20s, you kind of feel like you're a little bit invincible. And so I just didn't see any signs that there was anything wrong with me. And then I
Oh,
basically went vegan overnight and everything I had wrong with me just healed. So it was
really?
like, yeah. So it was like, let food be the medicine, medicine, my food. And then I went into this accident sort of as a girl and I feel like I died. I mean, I did come quite close to bar, but then it was like I was born and birthed into a woman from that experience. And then just a big journey of layer by layer, step by step, just being open to the signs of life, of like, this is where you should go to support as the next layer of healing, and just like layer by layer, and like plant medicines and then training modalities. And I did it in a pretty holistic way. And Western medicine was amazing at the beginning. I honor and respect Western medicine, absolutely has a place and a time. But I think there's also an amazing woman called Dr. Nasha Winters, who's all about how you approach your body, and especially people on a cancer journey who I support a lot doing the inner work. And she's always like, how can you support the terrain of your body in a sort of metabolic way? And so, and she said 95% of cancer and diseases can be prevented from um, lifestyle and what you eat.
Mm,
So it was kind of like just going on
interesting.
a big journey of educating myself on many layers, and just, yeah, just keeping trying to learn and just understand where my body was calling for support and how I could sort of honor it as best as I could. And I don't know if that makes sense.
Yes. And so veganism helped you? That was
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
interesting. I was
Mm-hmm.
a vegan for 6 years because I had
Mm-hmm.
a humanitarian magazine, vegan, ethical, eco-friendly, all that stuff. And
Beautiful.
Yeah. At the end of 6 years, my health deteriorated. Like I guess vegan wasn't for me. That vegan lifestyle was too harsh for me. So I
Yeah,
just became super anemic. I was also anorexic. I was also just all kinds of sorts of health issues I developed.
really interesting. Interesting.
So
Yeah, I'm not vegan now. I'm basically predominantly plant-based in my food. And then I'll have some meat and fish, more meat. When I do energy work, I need meats. And so I've slowly was super kind of
incorporated.
anal and boring. And it was like that joke of how do you know there's a vegan in the room? And it's like, oh no, don't worry, they'll tell you.
It's true.
So
It's
I kind of
true.
gone through that journey of learning to not be wonderfully annoying. And then coming out the other side, and so I've probably been eating. I work with a naturopath, and I have my bloods done once or twice a year, and then it's just like, okay, what does my body need? I would like to maybe have the option of having children, so how can I support my hormones? Or like, I always have something in my body that it's like, how can I support my body? So
Mm.
now I eat what my body calls for. And I think it's the more controlling you are. I remember my meditation teacher made such a good point in a Vipassana meditation that we did in Noble Silence for a week. And he said, people used to come on retreats 10, 12 years ago, and there was no paleo, no vegan, no this, no that. Everyone you had maybe a few out of a group of 40 that had a couple of things. And he said
Right.
now when people come, over half are gluten intolerant, this intolerant, that intolerant, celiac. And he said the biggest thing is about your mind, but people have such a fixation on food, but like your mental diet, focus on your mental diet. And the more relaxed you
Mm.
are, just think of your digestion system that changes the moment we get nervous and you sort of go to the loo. And so it was kind of an interesting point of like, the more controlling you are around food, the more controlling and uptight your body will be in terms of the food you eat, the way it's digested, the way that nutrition can add to your body or not so much. And so I think that was a great lesson of like, don't go down a rabbit hole of focusing on like, what do we eat and what can I not eat? And I don't know if that resonates.
Yes, and I think you're spot on with that because there were four of us, or well, including me, five in the house, right? There were four, and
Mm-hmm.
we all ate the same thing. My mother, she always has this thing. She always makes a cross on it, on a food, the food that she eats before she eats it, and then she says her prayer and crosses herself. And we just started eating, shoving the food with it. And we forgot about the prayer. We were all the other ones, right? Everybody else but her sick. Like
Mm-hmm.
we all got sick but her. And I feel like every
Mm-hmm.
time like she does the cross in her mind, it's blessed, it's good to go, it's healthy. So her mind
Mm-hmm.
already tells her
Mm-hmm.
it's safe food, it's good.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
it's one of those things like, man, the mind, like you said, you are, yeah.
But I think also you can structure things rather like intention follows, and where intention goes, energy flows. And I have a little temple space that I'm building on a little Greek island in an ancient olive grove that has its own little beach. And that's meant to be a place for healing and transformation. But I'm building a water temple, which is a Japanese Watsu water temple, and some part of the medicine of that is about water holding you unconditionally, whatever color, size you are, gender. And so, because it's the same temperature as the womb, but it's also, I've looked a lot into how water remembers and how water can be structured. And it's really, there's a Japanese scientist called Maremoto who to water played rock music, and then he put it in the freezer as the process was going, and then looked at it molecularly and under the microscope, and it was all messy and higgledy-piggledy and jaggedy. And then he put some water and played classical music to it, and he let it freeze as it was listening to that music. And there was like a perfect synchronicity and symmetry and a harmony in just how the atoms were formed and how he was looking under a microscope. So it's like we know that water can be structured and we know that water remembers. And for me, that just resonates so much in just my practice of when I'm supporting people, which is I'm working with people, but they're dealing with a trauma and a pain that happened 20 years ago. So it's held somewhere in the body. Maybe it's in the muscle memory, maybe it's also in the water of the body. But it's like, yeah, it's so, and like I do a prayer, not always, but you've reminded me actually to go back to it. I do a prayer just before I eat saying, God angels, please thank you to all the energies around this planet and on this planet that enabled this food to be on my plate. And please may this food heal me in any way I need to heal and let go anything I need to let go of. And then I eat. And it just again, like what you said with your mom, it's just like I don't know. I think for me, return ceremony is how I live my life, but it's like all these intentional things. And I think I just know in my heart that's how I've gone from a place of being like really in a lot of pain and then also like burning out and my thyroid being so out of whack and just being to a place now where like I'm really happy, I'm really
Thank
stable, I'm
God.
always in a good mood whenever stuff happens. Like obviously I'm a human being and I get triggered, but like I'm pretty good at like just being able to like learn the experiences of life in the way that it doesn't make me shake.
Mm, that is amazing. Huge transformation. You discovered, and I'm going to ask the next question. You discovered a
Mhm.
rare form of synesthesia after your near
Mhm.
death experience.
Yeah.
Can you explain what this feels like and how it allows you to see trauma within the body?
Yeah. I mean, I might go back one step, which is just explain what synesthesia is to some of your
Yes.
audience, because it was kind of new to me and I wasn't really aware of it until someone says, oh, that's what you have. But synesthesia is like a cross multisensory awareness. And so some people who might see synesthesia might see music as colors, for example. And so what happened to me, which is like after about 5 or 6 years of like starting to do different sort of energy work and also body work and reflexology and things like that, I then was with my business partner actually, who's also um, yeah, he's a pretty extraordinary healer and can also energetically connect to people that he's not with and that he hasn't met. And then I remember it was like the first time I saw he couldn't lift his arm and he couldn't even like get it into a coat because it was so sore. And then I could see this like gray, it looked like a gray mist, a cloud like around his arm socket, his shoulder socket. And I said intuitively, would you let me play with that? And it was like I had this sort of imaginary scalpel of just going through cutting and opening in the way that you would if you were having a
Mm.
surgery. And then learning also in the same way that you do in the 3D, like you have to close when you cut the body and you open, you have to close. It's really important. And so, yeah, and then by the end of it, he could lift his arm absolutely fine. And so it kind of been building my confidence and like I think because I invited in, the more I do, the more I can do, the more I see, the more I can see. So from working with him in person, realizing I can work in I can also work online and then also I can work with animals and then also that I'm able to work with people that I haven't met that I'll just see a video of. So it might sound a little wild, but it's just been like I had a very different life and some more finance corporate. And then it's just been quite a wild surrender experiment of like, okay, like I'm just gonna trust. And if I'm lucky enough to be given a gift that I can really help people and animals, like yeah, I feel like I have many jobs.
Wow. And is it a well-paid job? Is this something
Is it a
is it
what, sorry?
a well-paid job?
So typically when I'm supporting people, um, a session is normally 2 hours and it's $400 for 2 hours typically.
That's it.
Um,
Wow.
and so yeah, so that's and then I have some clients that um because I'm also in the same way of being wisdom that just comes through me as a channel. And so there's also some business people that I work with and they just use me as a sounding board. And so that's more of a like a monthly retainer. And then there's some clients that I work with that are quite high profile and are just physically and energetically attacked. And so there are clients who sort of feel an extra course of support, and that there's certain practices that I do just to support and protect them. So it's kind of, there are different things that I weave together.
Very
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
And you've developed an innovative somatic and energetic approach. Could you break this down for listeners who might not be familiar with these practices? Like, what does that mean?
Yeah. I mean, the way that I work, so perhaps the way I would speak to that is when I work with someone, it's a 2-hour session. And then the first 40 minutes, more or less, I will spend just working through the layers of just saying, I'd love to understand what's important to you. And where are you mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, sexually? How's your sleep? Have you had any mental or physical diagnosis? And then from there, we go to like, I mean, when people start chatting to me about things like this, I'll just start to see colors and structures, and I'll start to, something will come out my mouth like, did anything ever happen to you when you were 4? And just seeing you as an inner child, does that mean anything to you? Or like, a little bit like with you, or just say like, it just looks like you had a moment like as a child when you weren't safe and it's connected to your mother. Does that mean anything to you? And so things would just come out of my mouth. And then we have about an hour and 10 of where I start to open the space by saying some prayers and get them to lie back and breathe, with the in breath being just seeing white light coming into their body, and the out breath is just like seeing smoke, anything that's not serving their body leaving their field. And then coming back, what I'm doing on my end is just working through the layers of just anything that I see, colors or structures that I see blocking the body from fundamentally healing and just being back into alignment. Then I just work through the layers of just pulling out. And then at the end, we both share, and I just help connect the dots. We connect the dots together of what I've seen, and then helping me to, make sense of what I've seen. And then also from their side, just helping them to support and ground and just understand everything that they experience. And so, that's the way that somatically I work with the body typically.
Very interesting. And the fact that, I don't know if you just nonchalantly, that was just part of an example where you saw something when I was 4, but I did drown when I was 4. A girl pulled me out of the water. I was floating, and she did mouth to mouth, so she brought me back. Yeah, I don't know if you just saw that or that was just a coincidence, but
That's
yeah.
interesting. That's interesting. I mean,
Interesting.
I remember there's a numerologist that I used to work with quite closely, and numerology is about that names and numbers have meanings, and that we're all running in different cycles. So, for example, every 7 years, um, you are totally like reborn, renewed. So if you talk to doctors, like every cell in your body is renewed after a 7-year cycle. And so after 7 years, like, and it might make sense to some of your listeners if you think of like the 7-year itch in a marriage, or like the first 7 years of a child's life is so conditional and foundational, of like typically the biggest wounds that they tend to hold that perhaps will really dictate and determine how they choose to show up in the world as an adult. But for me, like when you say 4, like, and that you nearly died there, I remember having an experience where I also came quite close to the veil, not the accident experience that I had. And I remember speaking to the numerologist, she's also clairvoyant and psychic. And she said to me, "Oh, that's interesting from looking at your chart, because you had an out at that age." And so, but she said but it wasn't your time. And so there can be different times when the soul can have an out, but it's just like sometimes there can be like it's time to transition and for the soul to leave the body. And then other times it's like, okay, there's more in this life. But it's been really interesting for me because someone in my family very close to me recently had a stroke,
Oh,
and
I'm
he's been in
sorry.
a coma, and I've been working with him energetically whilst he's been in a coma. But it's been really fascinating for me just to kind of be quite close to someone and energetically who's like close to the veil and seeing him in this tunnel, like walking towards the light, and like, yeah, very interesting. But also how the Christian approach to the death and dying is like not to kind of, there's a lot of attachment and not so much, what's the word? I mean, if you look at India, if you look at Hindu or Buddhists, for example, they just understand that it's destiny and that the body, the soul will leave the body when it's the right time. And so there's a lot more, like it's a very different approach to grieving. And it's, yeah, I think psychologically it's a lot easier of just like, this is their fate, and not just so much of clinging and hanging on. And I don't know if that makes sense to you, but it's just something I've been reflecting on recently.
I mean, I've studied all world religions, and I think it does make sense. I just don't. I like the Christian approach where we know that there's hope that they are in a better place. I know Buddhists, they believe in reincarnation and they come back, but then I don't want to come back as a dog. Like, what is that? Or like, wait a minute.
My dogs have a really nice life.
Especially if they're homeless dogs. But so I prefer the heaven version over the coming back over and over to do the same old thing. Like for me, heaven is like yes. And that's what
Yeah.
keeps me doing the right thing and holding on to some values while I'm out here in this, doing all this so that I can hopefully go to heaven.
Yeah. But I think there's a friend of mine who's just always like a fountain of wisdom and knowledge. And I remember him saying to me an expression, which is rather the essence of it is, what we give out comes back. So be kind and do good
Yeah.
things. But the way he says it, he says karma is a bitch, and she never sleeps and she never forgets and she always delivers. And the number of times that I see people who are like, I don't know, maybe they'll take something that isn't theirs to take and then it gets taken from them, or they do something like financially that's not in line with our highest good and definitely oppositing from shadow, and then the year later their business runs out of funding. And so it's kind of, yeah, super interesting when you just like quietly sit back and you're like, compassion for where you are on your journey, not to realize like every word counts and every thought counts, and like just because no one can see what you're doing, like if you start doing stuff that's really connected to shadow, like good luck.
Yes.
Good luck.
Yes. And we have to be careful with our words, their energy. So saying something negative could affect our bodies. And yeah, like you said, actually, if we're lucky, we pay back. Like if we do something wrong and we're lucky, we get to pay back here, which I'd rather pay back here if I did something wrong. Then who knows?
Yeah. But it's, I
Right?
think it's, I think, I've always been like, I've had perhaps more than my fair share of maybe injuries and quite significant, kind of impacts on my body. But I also feel like in this life, I've been so lucky and supported and have a very abundant, beautiful, easy flow. But I think also my outer world is such a mirror of my inner world, of like, I see myself as a lucky person and that lucky things always happen to me and that everything is good, and just sprinkle everything just from a basis of deep gratitude. And I think there's like, I don't know, I'm learning all the time, every day, but it's like, I think that's a pretty high place to start from, if that's like, because it's like, it's your thoughts that create your filter and ultimately how you see the world, but it's like your thoughts dictate your behaviors and then your actions. And then ultimately that's the life experience. And so, I don't know, I think it's not rocket science, but I think for some of the people that I support, it's so obvious to me where they're off kilter. Of just like, they'll say to me something like, I'm unlucky. Bad things always happen to me. And they've had 40 surgeries and been hit by a car. And and it's just like it's so obvious of
Yeah.
what they have not been able to see so far. Like, oh my goodness, like wow, okay.
Yeah, you
Let's
attract
see
what
how
you
we can
put out
help.
there. Yes.
Yeah. I think, yeah,
Yes. And look at you, like you just said, you are like lucky, blessed, whatever verbiage you want to use, because look, you're beautiful inside out. And just like talking to you, I feel good. Like I can just feel your presence. It's such a positive soul and a very beautiful soul. And it's sad that you've had to go through near death experiences and you had to endure so much and all that trauma, but look at you, you actually turn that into so much and you help others and
yeah,
the
yeah,
resilience and my
yeah.
goodness. I mean,
Uh,
how does trauma like stored in the body affect both our mental and physical health? What do you think?
I mean, I think probably the way I would speak to that is more a little bit about stress. And so I
Mm.
think the way that trauma, I mean, from my experience, like I'll see the trauma in the body. That's like, it's a little bit like, I remember my meditation teachers explained it in a way that really resonated with me, which was, it's like, imagine walking through life with a piece of rope behind you, and over time, like might start to pick up some dirt, and then maybe some leaves might get attached, and then some brambles, and it might get a knot, or it might get caught because you're going around a corner in a tree or in a forest. And so it's like what's important is to keep doing the inner work so that you keep clearing the body, because we don't just get sick. Like Dr. Nasha Winters, who's such a thought leader in the cancer space, her message, which I so deeply resonate, which is whenever you're on a health challenge, or let's say on a cancer journey, which is the question is always like, what is your illness here to teach you? Or like if you think of
Oh
relationships, which are
yeah.
just mirrors and projections of the stuff that we still need to work through. So it's like, what is your relationship here to teach you? And it's like, unless we listen to the body and listen to the whispers of life of like, this is what you need to learn, then the whispers get louder, and then eventually the body starts to break down, and then we get sick. And so it's just like, if you kind of think of illness or your body or health just from a very different perspective, and like, I guess I live my life in a way of preventive medicine, and there's just so much I do every day, just little rituals and practices just to really, and especially because I work a lot with people on a cancer journey
Oh.
who really are just there to do the inner work. And the number of times I'll work with Western medical doctors who say again and again that the patients that they see that do the best, just with general illnesses, are the ones who are also doing the inner work. Because unless you also just heal the trauma, of which we all have a part to play, then it's only then that the body can really just come into coherence. And if you think of, I think if I remember of times in my life, especially in my 20s, where I was earning a lot of money, and then if I think of the times in my life that I've been happiest, it's when I wasn't earning anything like as much as I used to earn in that corporate thing, and where it was more like a sort of wealth and wellness with living this life where I was just in an office all the time and I didn't see any natural light, and it was just like very masculine and just very,
Mm.
yeah, just like full on heavy energy and just not healthy. I wasn't eating the right food and I wasn't moving my body enough. And then just also being times when it's like just that peace of like, after doing a lot of ceremonies, of like that peace
Mm.
and stillness that just comes from within, and just realizing like it's inside out. That's when you see these people who are
Yes.
like buying all this stuff, or the capitalist life that we live in, of like, you have to buy things in order to be happy. And it's like, hang on a sec, like, don't allow brands and marketing to take away your sovereignty of like, you can be happy and it doesn't cost anything. You don't need to buy anything.
Oh, I love that. So
Mm.
much wisdom. Wow. And do you do you believe that everyone can learn to release trauma and heal, or is it only accessible to certain emotional readiness?
I mean, I think there's a few different layers there, which is one, it's a like you'd have to acknowledge the problem. I think rather like, you know, alcoholics, I think you have to be, there has to be for someone. The only thing I need for someone to work with them is an an openness that I might be able to help them. That's it. Like if you look at studies where they have the placebo effect. And so
Yeah.
if you just look at the power of the mind, so it's like that's literally all I need, because I also sometimes work with children through the mothers. So if a child's been raped or has been estranged or is really little and can't
Ooh.
communicate, then I'll work with them through the mother, because I can see the energetic bonds, that their the connection, I can see it in the field, in the energetic field. So that's kind of, yeah, that's all I need, and that's all people need, is like just that willingness and that openness that like they can help me, and like I am able to get better. And if you look at it reminds me about Deepak Chopra's book Quantum Healing, which goes back to every thought counts and every word counts. And he was supporting people who were on significant health journeys, or someone who was on a cancer journey, and they worked with him, and they sort of got their mind into a place of like, yes, I can heal. Yes, I'm going to get better. And then they started to get better. And then they lost their confidence of like worry and thinking actually. And then their recovery turned around, and then ultimately they sadly transitioned. So it's just like that mental game and that mental agility is everything in
Mm.
anything. It doesn't necessarily matter on a health journey, but it's like it's yeah, I think it's such a superpower and a strength of just, if you can keep cultivating, like how much time are you spending at the gym, or like what about the mental gym, and just what about spending some love and intention and energy into cultivating that, so that you can, a little bit like I said before, learn the experiences of life in a way that it doesn't make you shake.
Wow. Oh, I love it. What a
Mm,
beautiful way to conclude my questions. But now we have some questions from the audience.
please.
And within each episode, I have a group where I go and ask them to provide me their questions. And I pick, the top 3, top 5, depends. So now we have Maura or Maura. Mental health challenges can feel overwhelming for so many people. What steps or mindset shifts can help people begin to navigate healing?
Sure. I mean, a very simple tool, when we're half asleep or we're half awake, we're in different brain waves, and it's the easiest time that you can reprogram the mind. And so this would be a time where you would focus on, the last thing I do before bed with my beloved is I'll say, we go through all the things that we're grateful for. And you can obviously do this on your own in a phone. And it's important to write it down, because we're visual beings fundamentally. And so you just start to see this long list that you add to day by day. And so if you, it's like the last thing that you run in your consciousness. So like never look at the news before bed, and never look at something that might be potentially triggering in terms of a message before bed.
Mm.
So if you go to bed and you just focus on all the things you're grateful for, and if I know sometimes for people who have depression, to ask them to focus on gratitude, it's really hard. But maybe if you could just focus on one thing and then go to two, and so on. But then in the morning, the first thing that I do when I wake up is I go through all the things I'm grateful for, that in general in my life, like to have a safe home, to have like so much love and support around me, for my body to be in such a place of ease, to have, such a abundant, and to be such a lucky person, and that lucky things always happen to me. And so that's how I bookend my day. And I know, because I've been doing this for 10 years, that it's like the power of compounding interest. It's like, it's really simple, but you also have to do it. And then slowly, slowly just start to change, because it's like if you and I were to go and drive and I'd say, okay, let's only look for blue cars, we would only see blue cars, but it's like it just will start to shift the filter of how you see the world.
Yes, I love that answer. I have a question from Steve. At a time when the world faces higher levels of stress and anxiety, what role do you think alternative healing methods play in the broader mental health conversation?
I mean, I think we're in a mental health pandemic.
Yeah.
And I think sadly, it's like, I think because of the awareness of anything that's happening on in the world, that it can come through to everyone's phones in a nanosecond. And so I think more and more, and especially as we look to, if you look at psychedelic assisted therapy, and if you look at the number of studies that are coming through of what it can do and how profound those molecules can be in supporting people in such holistic and mirrored ways to heal. And so I think as we get to a time where there's so much in the global landscape that's pretty full on and pretty wild. And so to support the psyches of people's mental health, I think there's many types of healing and alternative healing, but I think people are starting to wake up to that Western medicine looks at the symptom and not the cause, and also doesn't have the band, especially in the UK, cannot afford to help, like rather like food and what we eat is so much of the essence of our health. But doctors spend about half a day in 7 years being trained in nutrition. And so it's just like, again, just needing to maybe just ask healthy questions and just to really take ownership of just really doing what you can to support yourself to just keeping your sovereign health. But I think fundamentally, like there's more and more of a call for psychedelic assisted therapy, for just healing that's really just, yeah, looking at what lies beyond.
Mm. Yeah. So you're not a big supporter of the Western medicine anymore. Is it more?
Well, I honor and respect Western medicine, and it's done so much for me at times when I had some blood clots in my lungs and I collapsed in the street, and so I really, yeah, I like totally honor, respect, but there's a time and a place for Western medicine, and I think there's a lot of limitations that if you just start to work with and then weave Western medicine and more holistic medicine as and when it's right. And just for me, I think working more in the esoteric space and just seeing, um, just seeing results that are deeply meaningful, and just realizing I'm really able to help people in a meaningful way. And so for me, it just feels like this has been my sort of grief to gold story, and just something that brings me a lot of joy.
Yes, I'm actually with you on that. There's a place for Western medicine, but we also need to not
Yeah.
disregard. Yeah. But I would like to play some games, some quick games. They're going to be
Go ahead.
very quick. Game number one. This is called Healing Hypotheticals. And I'm going to ask you, basically, you would have to give like very quick answer, 1 to 2 second answer for the following questions. One
Go
mistake
ahead.
everyone makes in healing.
I would say probably holding a narrative and identity that's not in line with your highest good. For example, telling a lot of different people, like, I have a bad back, my back hurts, like, I'm someone who has a bad neck. And the amount of time that people, in the spirit of the body, following the mind, doing that.
Mm. Hmm. Most underrated tool for self healing.
I would say gratitude.
The first step to releasing emotional trauma.
There's there's something called the havening technique, which I do, which is, I guess it's more in a held space, so perhaps something that's a little bit more palatable and easy is like just move your body, like in terms of exercise, to shake, to stretch. Like there's so much medicine in movement.
Interesting. I love it. One book or resource everyone should read.
I think it would be, I'd be torn between, but if you go to Quantum Healing, Deepak Chopra, where every thought counts and every word counts.
If you could only say one sentence to a struggling person, what would it be?
I think the day that you die and it comes to a time of your body, the soul, time to transition, the soul leaves the body, you will be remembered by not what you've done, but how you make people feel. And there's a tremendous joy in service to others. So I think at times when I have not felt great, like I feel so much better. So it's like, what do you have to give? Like, what is it? Is it your time? Is it your patience? Is it your kindness? Is it your money? And just to really think about each day how you can give with what you have.
Game number 2, moving on to another game called Word Association Healing Edition. And I'm going to say random words, and you're going to respond with the first word that comes to your mind. So I say a word, and whatever word that comes to your mind. Trauma.
Tantra.
Balance.
Shadow work.
Balance.
Harmony.
Energy.
Healing.
Release.
Light.
Light.
Yeah, because I work a lot with light. And when the body is, when I'm healing people, I will flood their body with white light.
Wow, beautiful. Fear.
Pain.
Synesthesia.
Sensory awareness.
Purpose.
Joy.
Pain.
Trauma.
Forgiveness.
Compassion.
And love.
Unity.
Wow, you are good. Okay, so game number 3. This is a synesthesia challenge, how to play. So as someone with the synesthesia thing, you see trauma as colors and structures. And this game, you can pick scenarios or emotions, and I'll ask you what colors or shapes come to your mind when you think of these. So what colors do you associate with sadness?
Can be a dark blue or a dark gray.
Bang, I guess I'm a sad creature because you saw that gray on me.
50 Shades of Grey.
50 Shades of Grey. I gotta watch that movie too. Oh, Lord have mercy. What shape or form would love take?
Around the heart. Yes, it would be pink.
Pink. Nice. What do hope and resilience look like in your mind's eye?
I think in terms of symbolism, it would be a balance between the polarities, which the symbol that represents that is it's a circle within a square.
Oh.
Yeah. And I see structures. Yeah. So sometimes I'm guided to bring in to build circles inside people's bodies.
Beautiful. Wow. A circle within a square.
You will have seen it in artwork. Like if you look at temples, 'cause I'm building a temple, so I've tried to learn and educate myself about symbolism, but all temples are built around certain symbols, and symbols have meanings.
Oh yeah, definitely. They definitely have meanings. Yeah. Wow. What does green and violet together make you feel?
Green sometimes when I'll see in people's body, it can be connected to perhaps toxicity or illness, or perhaps something that's gone a little infected.
Mm.
Yeah, that's kind of my experience of how some of the connections to green.
Mm. And like purple or violet?
Um, I Purple violets, not so much. There isn't necessarily. I don't find that color very much in people's field, so I
Oh.
can't really speak to that. I mean, blue I work with a lot because of Archangel Michael, and he's connected to blue, and that's about protection, protecting people.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know who told me or where I read that purple is a royal color, so it means your ancestors might have had some
Hmm.
royalty or something.
Hmm.
Mm.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Very interesting. I'm learning all this because yeah, there's a meaning for every color and every yeah, it's so fascinating, you guys. The next game is called Heal or Hold. And I'm going to give Pearly different challenges or scenarios and ask her whether she would release it, heal, or carry it. Hold.
Release, carry, or hold. Sure.
Yes. And if you feel like explaining your reasoning briefly, please, by all means, of course. A toxic relationship.
I would release, but it's always observing, like, what are the lessons that I needed to learn, because you'll keep getting the lessons unless you do the work.
Mm,
And then you upgrade and get a partner who's different and has different lessons that you need to learn.
love it. A part of your personality that was shaped by trauma, but it also made you strong, independent, and successful.
Yeah, I mean, I would 100% hold that, because it's like challenges, opportunities to evolve, and our pain can be our greatest teachers.
Childhood dreams you've outgrown.
I don't remember my dreams very
You
much.
don't? Wow.
So I would release that.
Really? Someone you love deeply who has also been a major source of emotional pain, family, partner, or friend.
I think again, those defining relationships, especially within our families, can be really the making of us in many ways. And I think for children who are perhaps maybe had slightly more challenging constellations, it means that there's always a gift and there's always a silver lining. So those children can be far more creative and street smart and go and travel the world and live in different countries. And so it's something I would hold, even though there might be a painful experience to that.
Self doubt during a major life decision.
It's something I would um, it was something I would release. I very much play the surrender experiment and trust the flow of life and ask for signs and ask for guidance. And so yeah, I think there's an expression, if you ask 10 people something, then you should get an answer of roughly what's the right thing to do. And so having amazing mentors around you and people that can really hold you, I think, is everything.
Hmm. Emotional walls that prevent you from being truly vulnerable and intimate, but they also keep you safe from repeat heartbreak.
I would challenge that and release that, just because I think vulnerability is the doorway to intimacy, as Brené Brown said, that beautiful social scientist.
Beautiful. A righteous anger at someone or something that wronged you, fuel that has driven your growth, activism, or ambition.
I mean, I think anything to do with a grudge is an energy that's fundamentally not serving you, and it's something I would release. It's not something that resonates with me of how I roll.
How I roll, I love it. Grief for someone you've lost that you carry heavily, but it feels like a way of staying close to them.
again, I feel like that's something to release, because grief is a deeply profound experience and takes many faces. And yeah, but it's also something that needs to be processed, and
Yeah.
taking time to honor your grief.
The alternate life in your head, the childhood you wish you had, the parent you wish that they'd been, the partner you wish they were. It soothes you but keeps you resentful.
Again, I think a resentful energy is just not something that would
It's not healthy.
that serves us, and so it's something I would always work to release.
And lastly, a memory tied to a deep lesson you've learned.
I think that's something I would hold and keep, just because the lessons that we have in life, our biggest lessons, are our greatest teachers.
Yeah. And this was the end of that one particular game. I'm going to put a parentheses because this question came to my mind and it's a stupid question, but I'm curious. Like if your life right now was a soundtrack, what would it be? Like which song would it be?
It would be Rumors by Fleetwood Mac, which is the name of their album, that's like top album, Rumors. And I think
That's
it would be
awesome.
that song I love by them, which is Go Your Own Way, because I was born into a family that had quite a big story, and I really have tried to create my own narrative and create my own story that's, yeah. And I think create my own identity, which I think is important to me.
Hmm. Your family had a big story?
Hmm.
Why didn't we speak about that? Who
It's
was
something I try
it?
and it's something I try and, yeah, yeah, I think it's something I'm trying to move away from, just so that it's my story is more important than people who have died and come before me.
Hmm. Well, I guess maybe one day when we'll become BFFs, you're gonna tell me that part of the story, that
Sure.
closed chapter. It sounds like you have so many layers. It's crazy. Like the amount of layers. Wow.
Thank you. Thank you.
What about if healing had a taste? What would it be?
I would say it's like a golden luminescent liquid balm, edible body butter. Yeah.
And do you want to play with we have what's in the healing box? So you would pick something. Basically, if you imagine you're hypothetically helping someone heal, and then I would ask you what tools or techniques you would metaphorically pull out of your healing box to aid them. Okay. Someone who says, I feel stuck, like I'm chasing a dream, but making no progress.
I would try and ground them in the reality of what that dream is, and perhaps if you think of where you want to be in 3 years' time, or 5 years' time, or 1 year's time, and then reverse engineer of like, what can I do today that will move me towards that? Or it's like that expression of, there's a great book called What's the One Thing? So it's like the best CEOs in the world prioritize their time. And so it's like, what's the one thing you can do such which by doing everything else becomes easier or irrelevant? And then it's just like day by day, you just start to move in line with whatever it is that is important to you and you want to achieve.
Oh, I love that. So just go
Hmm.
backwards.
Hmm.
Someone who has body pain, but they can't get rid of, and they cannot get rid of, but no clear medical diagnosis.
I mean, that's definitely my sweet spot. So it's kind of a multi-led process of working energetically with the body, with the sort of like the microenergetic releasing the layers of trauma that I would be able to see, but then also getting them to change their narrative, change
Mm.
their identity, so they're not identifying with their pain.
So rewire and all that.
Mhm.
Someone who says they just can't let go of resentment or anger.
Well, there's a technique called havening, which is like trauma release. So it's a way to bring up the memory that's really strong. And then you sort of track, is that out of 10, out of 10 being couldn't be worse or more angry or something like that, and where they feel it in their body. And then there's a trauma release technique, which is incredibly effective and really powerful. And so, yeah, there's different tools that I'd weave in that instance.
I'm assuming this would probably be the same answer for someone who pees on themselves every time somebody yells at them.
Yeah,
Do
I mean,
yeah.
you would look at what's the emotion that's sitting behind that. So is it fear or is it anxiety? And because of the gift I've been given, I'd be able to see what it was and where it's being held in the body. And then I can support them to help release.
Mm. Someone who has midlife crisis, nothing makes them happy, no motivation to do anything.
I mean, I think we'd probably, I mean, I would probably need to understand a little bit more of that landscape, but just to track back to what is it in the most simple way that brings them joy? Like if there's must be one thing that brings them joy, whether it's light or nature or music or something like that. And to just offer a way of like a reconnection to what brings you joy.
Mm, beautiful. Someone who is at a crossroads and doesn't know what to pick.
I mean, in a fun way, you can play with life of asking for signs and within a specific time zone and like in the signs that you cannot miss, just in terms of playing with the intelligence that sits behind our lives. And then you can, yeah, you can to see how what comes forward. And I find it's always really fascinating to play like that.
I love that answer. I never thought of it like that, but that's actually so exciting. Just have some fun with
Hmm.
it. Like if you're in
Hmm.
that moment.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, just lay out your cards. But I think, yeah, because there's something quite big at the moment that I'm working on, and it's like I don't want to control life. So it's just like put my cards on the table and then just trust and just allow things to move. And yeah, trust that things will move in the way that they're supposed to.
Yeah. Is there anything you wish I had asked that I did not?
No, I mean, it was more just in terms of connecting with people. And if people are going through pain, emotional and physical pain or anxiety or back pain, things like that and the like, it's always such a pleasure and a privilege to support people. And I offer a free 15-minute call um, to anyone that wants to ask me questions, perhaps how I might be able to support them. And then I also just doing a special limited offer of it's normally 2 hour session for $400, but very happy to offer $100 off so that it's $300 in total. And I'll get my team to send all the details over.
Amazing. Thank you. And where can they find you?
Yeah, so if you look at Pearly Montagu, spelt pearl like an oyster in the sea with a Y on the end, and then Montagu, Montagu. On Instagram, you can also find me. It's under a Pearly Way of Life. And then my website also, which is mandalay.org. So manderley.org. And yeah, come and find me there. And there's various different free tools and free offerings and things like that.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Pearly. I really appreciate it. I had such an amazing experience with you. You're very fascinating. And we will keep in touch. Have a
Thank you.
blessed
Thank you.
night. Thank
All right.
you.
Blessings to you. Bye bye.
Bye.